Imagine the blinding stadium lights and the absolute euphoria of a BTS concert in Brussels. The energy is wild, but suddenly the music halts. An army in the massive crowd collapses. Chaos? Panic? You'd think so. But what happens next will give you major goosebumps. How do the biggest superstars on Earth handle a terrifying medical emergency mid-performance? Do they just let security deal with it? Or do they step up in a way that literally shocked the globe? The unscripted, raw reactions of these 7 guys didn't just help a fainting fan, it made the whole world respect them forever. Are you ready to uncover the true personalities hiding behind the microphones? Number 7. RM, the Captain's Sudden Halt. Picture the absolute madness and breathtaking magnitude of a sold-out BTS stadium concert in Brussels, guys. The sheer energy in the air is thick enough to cut with a knife. The European night sky is illuminated by tens of thousands of glowing army bombs, creating a perfectly synchronized, undulating ocean of purple light. And the bass is thumping so incredibly hard that you can literally feel it vibrating right through your ribcage. BTS is in the absolute zone, delivering a high-octane, sweat-drenched performance, and the crowd is roaring with a deafening intensity that resembles a commercial jet engine taking off right next to your ears. It's pure, unadulterated euphoria. But amidst this massive scale of beautiful, highly orchestrated chaos, the role of a true leader is never ever just about hitting the right notes, nailing the complex choreography, or looking absolutely flawless for the high-definition fan cams. Enter RM. Kim Namjoon, the undeniably brilliant brain, the sturdy emotional anchor, and the fierce protector of BTS. While many performers understandably get completely swept away and lost in the blinding, intoxicating euphoria of the spotlight, Namjoon possesses this almost supernatural, hyper-vigilant radar. With a documented IQ of 148, his brain is always working on overdrive, constantly scanning, analyzing, and reading the massive, swaying ocean of faces spread out before him in the darkness. He's not just looking for cheers or validation, he's instinctively monitoring the safety of the tightly packed, pulsating crowd. Suddenly, during a highly energetic transition between songs, his incredibly sharp eagle eyes catch a bizarre, unsettling ripple in the dense VIP standing section, right near the edge of the extended stage. It's not the usual rhythmic jumping or joyful dancing that you'd expect to see at a K-pop concert. It's a terrifying, sudden collapse of the human wave. People are violently parting like the Red Sea, pure panic washing over their illuminated faces as they look down, frantically waving their hands, screaming for help, and crossing their arms into a giant X to desperately signal the stage that a medical emergency is unfolding. In a fraction of a second, the rapper and leader makes a monumental decision that completely goes against every single performer's deeply ingrained instinct. You know, the age-old entertainment industry golden rule, right? The show must go on, no matter what happens, no matter the extreme circumstances. But for RM, the physical safety and well-being of an army completely and utterly overrides any unwritten industry rule, broadcast schedule, or the flow of a multi-million-dollar live production. Without missing a single beat, he aggressively and definitively signals the stage directors, the sound engineers, and his bandmates. He literally slashes his hand horizontally across his throat in the universal, urgent, cut the music immediately gesture. The thunderous, heart-pounding backing track abruptly halts, leaving a jarring, echoing silence in the massive arena that instantly sends a cold shiver down your spine. The sudden, unnatural lack of music is deafening, and you can literally hear the collective confused gasp of over 50,000 people echoing out into the chilly Brussels night. But RM doesn't freeze for even a microsecond. He immediately brings his custom microphone to his lips, his deep, uniquely authoritative voice booming through the stadium's massive line array speakers, instantly transforming before our very eyes from a global pop idol into a highly efficient, deeply empathetic crisis manager. Using his exceptionally fluent, commanding English, he doesn't just meekly ask what's wrong. He takes total, undeniable control of the entire terrifying situation. Stop, stop, stop. Please hold on. Cut the music. His voice echoes powerfully across the stadium, raising his long arms in a universally calming gesture to instantly suppress the sudden, dangerous wave of confusion and anxiety that is beginning to wash over the massive, tightly packed crowd. He urgently directs the attention of the bewildered local security guards directly to the problematic spot, pointing his finger precisely at the epicenter of the commotion like a laser beam. "We need medics over there, right now. Please make some space, everyone. Please step back and give them air," he instructs. When a person faints, oxygen deprivation is often the main culprit, and a crushing crowd only exacerbates the intense body heat and severe lack of breathable air, making RM's rapid command to step back a literally life-saving medical instruction. His tone strikes the absolute perfect, delicate balance between a strict, urgent command and a deeply reassuring fatherly warmth. Think about the immense, crushing psychological and physical pressure resting squarely on his broad shoulders right at that exact pivotal moment. From a sociological and crowd control perspective, massive stadiums are basically high-pressure cookers. When someone faints from heat exhaustion, dehydration, or extreme claustrophobia, the immediate surrounding crowd naturally panics. One wrong word, one slight sign of panic from him, one mismanaged second, and a deadly crowd crush, a terrifying domino effect of pushing and trampling, could have easily ensued in that densely packed, adrenaline-fueled standing area. We've all unfortunately heard the tragic, heartbreaking stories of massive stadium concerts gone horribly wrong, where a lack of direct communication and crowd control leads to devastating, fatal consequences. But Namjoon, drawing on his immense years of experience leading the biggest music group on the planet, handles the incredibly volatile situation with the effortless grace and tactical precision of a seasoned veteran. He speaks directly to the panicked fans standing closest to the fainted army, offering soft, steadying words of comfort over the mic, urging everyone to take deep, slow breaths, to remain completely calm, and absolutely not to push forward under any circumstances. He literally halts a tightly scheduled multi-million-dollar live production, effectively keeping the other 6 members perfectly calm and grounded, just to ensure that one single vulnerable fan is safely extracted over the heavy steel barricades and placed securely onto a medical stretcher by the first responders. The sheer, undeniable respect this particular action demands from both the grueling music industry and the general public is absolutely astronomical. He wasn't thinking about the ruined flow of the meticulously planned set list, the strict venue curfews that come with hefty financial fines, or the viral videos that would inevitably flood the internet. His brilliant mind was solely, purely focused on the absolute sanctity of a human life. And as the frantic medical team finally flashes a clear thumbs up to the stage, indicating the fan is conscious, breathing, and receiving proper care, you can visibly, tangibly see the immense, suffocating tension suddenly leave RM's body. He lets out a heavy, visible exhale, a brief, highly emotional moment of raw vulnerability that the giant venue LED screens accidentally caught in ultra-high definition, showing the entire world just how deeply and genuinely he cares for the very people who put them on that colossal stage. Only after confirming absolute, undeniable safety does he turn back to his 6 brothers, giving them a subtle, reassuring nod, before smoothly and masterfully hyping the silent, stunned crowd back up from a dead stop to a roaring, passionate frenzy, picking up the complex performance exactly where they left off, as if he hadn't just single-handedly prevented a potential mass disaster. That unbelievable level of situational awareness, that unapologetic, fiercely protective prioritization of human life over pure entertainment is exactly why Kim Namjoon isn't just viewed as a standard K-pop idol, but as a true inspirational global leader who commands the absolute unwavering respect of the entire world. But wait, if you think RM's leadership was impressive, just wait until you find out what the others were doing during this exact same chaotic incident, because their raw, unfiltered reactions will absolutely melt your heart and make you respect them even more. Number 6. Jimin, the angelic gaze of pure empathy. While Namjoon took absolute, undeniable control of the microphone and the overarching logistical nightmare unfolding within the massive stadium, you really have to shift your attention to the far right side of the extended stage to witness something that will genuinely make your heart ache in the best and most profound way possible. We are talking about Park Jimin, the mesmerizing lead vocalist and main dancer, universally known and adored in the massive, highly competitive K-pop industry as BTS's resident guardian angel. A beautiful nickname he earned not just for his breathtakingly ethereal visuals or his gravity-defying contemporary dance moves, but for his profoundly deep, almost overwhelming capacity for genuine human empathy. When the thunderous, heart-pounding music suddenly cut off and the chaotic, terrifying ripple of sheer panic began to aggressively tear through the densely packed VIP standing section in the Brussels arena, Jimin didn't just stand there idly waiting for instructions like a typical, highly scripted performer might understandably do in a moment of sheer confusion. Instead, his immediate, raw reaction was incredibly physical, intensely emotional, and deeply instinctive. You really have to understand the intricate background here, guys. Jimin spent his formative years meticulously training in contemporary dance, an intensely emotional, highly expressive art form that fundamentally requires the dancer to be hyper-aware of subtle body language, invisible physical tension, and raw human breathing patterns. Because of this unique, specialized background, his brain is uniquely wired to literally read the physical distress of a massive crowd much faster and more accurately than the average person. The very microsecond RM decisively signaled for the backing track to completely stop, the intense, fierce, almost intimidating performer persona that Jimin was projecting to the roaring stadium completely evaporated into thin air, instantly replaced by raw, unadulterated human concern. Without a single solitary moment of hesitation, Jimin quickly paced to the absolute farthest edge of the towering stage, getting dangerously close to the heavy, unforgiving steel barricades, completely ignoring the blinding, swiveling pyrotechnic spotlights that were flashing directly and aggressively into his sensitive eyes. In a sudden, unexpected move that speaks absolute volumes about his burning, desperate desire to genuinely connect with the terrifying medical situation unfolding below, he immediately reached up and forcefully pulled out both of his custom-molded, highly expensive in-ear monitors. For those who don't know the intricate technical side of massive stadium concerts, those specialized earpieces are a live singer's absolute lifeline. They heavily block out the deafening, disorienting, chaotic echo of the 50,000-seat stadium and tightly feed the artist the direct, perfectly balanced audio mix they desperately need to stay exactly on beat and in key. By physically ripping them out of his ears without a second thought, Jimin was deliberately and consciously stripping away the protective artificial audio barrier of the multi-million-dollar live production, so he could hear the raw, unfiltered, chaotic sounds of the panicked crowd. His highly trained ears desperately listening for any verbal cries for help, gasps for air, or specific shouted instructions from the scrambling first responders on the ground. It was an incredibly grounding, profoundly humanizing action that instantly shattered the invisible wall between the untouchable global idol and the terrified fans. Then, dropping down into an incredibly deep, precarious, almost agonizing crouch right at the very precipice of the towering stage, Jimin leaned his upper body forward into the dark abyss as far as physical gravity would possibly allow without him tumbling over the edge. His beautiful, highly expressive eyes, usually sparkling with an intoxicating, playful charisma and fierce, unyielding confidence, were suddenly wide, dark, and overflowing with an incredibly intense, heartbreaking level of worry and sheer panic that absolutely no amount of heavy stage makeup or fancy lighting could ever hide from the high-definition cameras. He didn't grab a microphone to speak. His high emotional intelligence knew that RM was already masterfully handling the vocal crowd control, and adding another booming voice over the massive speakers might just create a dangerous, overwhelming auditory confusion for the panicked masses. Instead, Jimin deliberately became a silent, fiercely protective guardian angel in the chaos. He intentionally used his intense, calming physical presence to offer a profound, unspoken emotional support system. He locked absolute, unwavering, laser-focused eye contact with the terrified, trembling fans who were standing closest to the fainted army, his striking face projecting a powerful, incredibly loud, silent message of, "I see you, I hear you, I am right here with you, and absolutely none of us are going anywhere until this is completely fixed and everyone is safe." You can literally see the frantic, hyperventilating fans looking up at his crouched figure, their panicked expressions slowly softening and their erratic breathing stabilizing just by witnessing his deeply comforting, unwavering proximity. But Jimin's profound, world-renowned empathy is never just passive, it's intensely and highly proactive. While staying completely silent to allow RM's commanding, reassuring voice to echo clearly through the massive line array speakers, Jimin began executing incredibly rapid, precise, and authoritative hand gestures. He started frantically waving down the venue's roaming local security staff who were stationed in the dark, chaotic pit below, physically directing their heavy, blinding flashlights toward the exact epicenter of the terrifying medical emergency with an intense, commanding urgency that demanded absolute, immediate compliance. When his sharp, analytical mind realized that the intense, suffocating body heat and extreme physical dehydration were highly likely the main, dangerous culprits for the fans' sudden collapse in that densely packed, airless pit, his quick-thinking survival instincts instantly kicked into maximum overdrive. He abruptly spun around, briefly abandoning his precarious crouched position, and literally sprinted toward the massive drum riser all the way at the back of the sprawling stage. He rapidly, almost frantically, gathered several sealed bottles of ice-cold water that were explicitly reserved for the members' intense physical exertion during their grueling 3-hour set list. Sprinting back to the dangerous edge of the stage, his heart pounding in his chest, he didn't just carelessly toss the heavy bottles into the chaotic, surging crowd, which could have easily accidentally injured someone in the face or caused a dangerous trampling scramble for hydration. Instead, he meticulously leaned his entire torso over the steep precipice once again, physically handing the chilled water bottles directly and safely into the outstretched, waiting hands of the burly, stressed security guards below, urgently pointing and gesturing for them to carefully, immediately distribute the life-saving water to the hyperventilating fans standing immediately surrounding the fainted army, to prevent a terrifying, catastrophic domino effect of mass heat exhaustion. Think about the incredible, mind-blowing emotional depth and situational awareness required to process that kind of high-stakes, terrifyingly chaotic situation with such meticulous, deeply caring precision. This wasn't a calculated, highly orchestrated PR stunt manufactured by a giant corporate agency, nor was it a heavily scripted interaction designed to strategically trend on global social media platforms. This was Park Jimin's true, naked, undeniably pure character, completely exposed and heavily scrutinized under the harsh, unforgiving stadium lights of Brussels. Number 5. Jungkook, the eagle-eyed protector's swift reflex. If you thought the intense, rapid-fire responses of RM and Jimin were absolutely mind-blowing, you desperately need to brace yourself for what the youngest member of the phenomenal septet was doing at that exact same heart-stopping moment, because it completely and utterly redefines the concept of hyper-vigilant situational awareness in the fast-paced, high-stakes global entertainment industry. We are talking about Jungkook, the universally beloved, multi-talented golden maknae of BTS, a man who is globally renowned not just for his breathtakingly powerful, crystal-clear vocals and flawless, hard-hitting dance moves, but for his absolutely incredible, almost superhuman physical capabilities and intensely sharp, predator-like senses. To truly grasp the sheer, breathtaking magnitude of his raw, unfiltered reaction in that chaotic Brussels arena, you have to deeply understand the fascinating physiological and psychological makeup of Jungkook as a performer and as a human being. This is a highly trained martial artist, a dedicated boxer with lightning-fast hair-trigger reflexes, and an extraordinarily observant individual who famously possesses what the massive army fandom lovingly refers to as boba eyes, massive, incredibly expressive wide eyes that relentlessly take in every single microscopic, fleeting detail of his chaotic, fast-moving surroundings with the mind-boggling pinpoint accuracy of a military-grade high-tech surveillance camera. While the deafening, bone-rattling roar of over 50,000 passionate, screaming fans was violently echoing off the massive, cold concrete walls of the European stadium, creating a beautiful but intensely disorienting, overwhelming wall of pure, unadulterated sound and blinding light, Jungkook's highly attuned, athletic senses were operating on a completely different, vastly elevated frequency. Even before the frantic, terrifying ripple of sheer panic fully erupted and tore through the densely packed, sweaty VIP standing section, Jungkook had already noticed something fundamentally, dangerously wrong. In the chaotic, constantly undulating ocean of glowing, synchronized purple lights, his razor-sharp, eagle-like vision caught a microscopic, highly unnatural disruption in the rhythmic movement of the massive crowd, a sudden violent sway, a terrifying momentary collapse in the dense human structure that his deeply instinctual athletic brain immediately and accurately flagged as a critical, life-threatening danger zone. The very microsecond RM's booming, authoritative voice decisively cut through the heavy stadium line array speakers to drastically halt the multi-million-dollar live production. The playful, charismatic, effortlessly cool persona of the Golden Maknae instantly vanished into thin air, completely replaced by the intense, deeply serious, and fiercely protective demeanor of a highly trained elite first responder. Without a single solitary microsecond of hesitation, Jungkook aggressively and explosively sprinted from the safe center of the main stage directly toward the treacherous, towering edge of the extended platform, his powerful, highly muscular legs eating up the immense, intimidating distance in a literal blur of frantic, desperate motion. He didn't just casually walk over to investigate the commotion, he urgently closed the gap with the explosive, heart-pounding speed of someone whose very own blood relative was in critical, immediate danger. When he reached the incredibly dangerous precipice of the towering stage, completely ignoring the massive, blinding pyrotechnic rigs that were radiating intense heat and the intimidating, bone-breaking drop down to the hard concrete floor below, his immediate physical stance spoke absolute, undeniable volumes about his raw, unfiltered, completely unscripted character. Jungkook planted his heavy, thick-soled combat boots firmly on the extreme, precarious edge of the stage, his entire, highly athletic body intensely coiled and practically vibrating with an overwhelming, desperate surge of pure, unadulterated adrenaline. If you look incredibly closely at the raw, unedited, shaky fan cam footage from that exact terrifying, heart-stopping moment, you can vividly and clearly see the heavy, sculpted muscles in his forearms and thick neck visibly tensing and popping under the harsh, unforgiving, blinding stadium spotlights. He was literally, physically preparing his body to vault completely over the massive, heavy steel barricades and plunge directly into the chaotic, suffocating, panicking crowd to personally, physically rescue the fainted fan if the local venue medics did not magically arrive within the next agonizing ticking seconds. That is not just a standard, highly polished performer showing casual, expected PR concern. That is a fiercely loyal, intensely protective, profoundly empathetic human being whose deeply ingrained fight-or-flight survival instincts had fully and aggressively activated to physically protect the vulnerable people he genuinely, deeply loves with all of his heart. But his incredibly sharp, analytical mind also acutely knew that blindly jumping into a panicked, claustrophobic, surging crowd could potentially cause a catastrophic, deadly crowd crush, so he forcefully and masterfully channeled that explosive, massive surge of adrenaline into highly precise, incredibly effective tactical action. Utilizing his phenomenal, world-renowned eagle vision, he deliberately became the ultimate, indispensable physical link between the chaotic, terrifying zero ground and the desperately scrambling, confused security personnel. He raised his heavily tattooed, muscular arm high into the chilly night air, his index finger pointing with the absolute, unyielding, terrifying precision of a sniper's laser beam directly at the exact, specific epicenter of the crushing medical emergency. He didn't just lazily point, he aggressively, relentlessly held that firm, commanding, tiring position, absolutely refusing to let his heavy arm drop for even a fraction of a second, serving as an undeniable, highly visible, living, breathing beacon for the frantic paramedics who were desperately, blindly trying to navigate their heavy equipment through the dense, confusing, terrifying sea of terrified, crying, hyperventilating fans. His striking, beautiful face, usually glowing with an intoxicating, boyish joy and infectious, brilliant laughter during their grueling, high-energy concerts, was incredibly dark, intensely rigid, and entirely devoid of any typical manufactured idol expression. His strong jaw was clenched so incredibly tight you could visibly see the heavy muscles aggressively feathering under his flawless skin, and his large, expressive eyes were fiercely locked onto the fainted army with an agonizing, heartbreaking level of intense, pure worry and sheer panic. He constantly, rapidly barked loud, unmiked, desperate instructions directly over the towering edge of the massive stadium, repeatedly demanding the slow-moving local security guards to hurry up, to move faster, to aggressively clear a much wider, safer path for the bulky, rigid medical stretcher. Think about the profound, deeply emotional, tear-jerking journey of this remarkable young man. Jungkook fundamentally grew up right before our eyes, debuting at the incredibly tender, vulnerable, fragile age of 15, constantly being nurtured, heavily protected, and deeply loved by both his 6 older brothers and the massive, fierce global army. For his entire crazy formative life, he was the precious, shielded, closely guarded youngest member. But in that terrifying, highly volatile, and dangerously chaotic moment in the chilly Brussels night, the entire decade-long dynamic completely and beautifully shifted on its axis. The intensely protected boy had fully, undeniably transformed into the fierce, unyielding, ultimate protector. He was absolutely determined to use his immense physical strength, his massive global platform, and his hyper-focused athletic senses to safely, personally guard the very same incredible people who had loyally, tirelessly guarded him for an entire decade. Number 4. J-Hope, the sunshine's calming reassurance. When you think of Jung Ho-sok, universally known and adored across the globe as J-Hope, your mind instantly, effortlessly conjures up images of blinding, radiant sunshine, infectious, room-illuminating smiles, and an absolutely unmatched, boundless level of kinetic energy that can literally power a small city. In the highly complex, meticulously structured dynamic of BTS, he is the undisputed dance leader, the crucial beating heart of their legendary live performances, and the designated mood maker who effortlessly keeps the group's morale skyrocketing even during their most grueling, utterly exhausting world tours. But what happens to the resident sunshine when a massive, terrifyingly dark cloud of pure panic suddenly descends on a 50,000-seat stadium? During that chilling, unprecedented moment in Brussels, when RM aggressively halted the backing track and the deafening, bone-rattling bass was abruptly replaced by the horrifying, echoing silence of a massive medical emergency, the entire atmospheric energy of the arena dangerously plummeted. It's a well-documented psychological phenomenon in massive crowd settings. When the primary source of entertainment suddenly stops without warning, an incredibly heavy, suffocating wave of anxiety and collective dread immediately washes over the masses. People start whispering, pushing, and catastrophizing, creating a highly volatile, deeply unpredictable environment where fear can spread faster than wildfire. This is exactly where J-Hope's profound, incredibly high emotional intelligence and unparalleled mastery of crowd psychology beautifully and miraculously kicked in. While RM was firmly barking tactical orders and Jimin and Jungkook were intensely, physically focused on the exact epicenter of the crisis at the edge of the stage, J-Hope immediately recognized a secondary, equally dangerous threat looming in the dark: the rapidly deteriorating mental state of the other 49,000 fans who were completely, entirely in the dark about what was happening. He knew with absolute terrifying certainty that if the entire stadium succumbed to that paralyzing fear, the resulting chaotic surge could easily hinder the medical professionals and trigger a massive, deadly domino effect of panic. So, in a brilliant, totally unscripted pivot that showcases his legendary stage presence, J-Hope decisively stepped back from the dangerous precipice of the extended stage and deliberately positioned himself right in the dead center of the massive glowing platform. He intrinsically understood that he needed to become a highly visible, radiant beacon of complete and utter calm amid the horrifying storm. Without even needing to pick up a microphone initially, he immediately began employing his entire incredibly expressive body to aggressively neutralize the toxic, suffocating tension polluting the chilly European air. You have to remember his deep, foundational roots as a gritty, underground street dancer in Gwangju. Street dancers are fundamentally trained to communicate highly complex, raw emotions entirely through physical movement, reading the subtle, shifting vibe of a room and instantly manipulating it with their bodies. J-Hope began executing slow, exaggerated, incredibly deliberate breathing motions. He raised his long, graceful arms high above his head in a massive, sweeping arc, inhaling deeply and visibly, his chest expanding under his sweat-drenched stage outfit, and then slowly, rhythmically pushed his hands down toward the floor while exaggerating a long, soothing exhale. Over and over again, he repeated this simple, grounding physical mantra, his bright, usually playful eyes totally locked on the massive, trembling ocean of glowing army bombs spread out before him. He was literally, physically conducting a massive, stadium-wide, synchronized breathing exercise, silently coaxing tens of thousands of terrified, hyperventilating fans to mirror his calm, steady rhythm and physically force their racing heart rates to miraculously slow down. It was a breathtakingly beautiful, profoundly surreal sight to behold, the undisputed king of high-octane hip-hop choreography transforming into a massive, comforting yoga instructor for 50,000 people in the blink of an eye. But he didn't just stop at physical gestures. When he finally brought his custom-molded, sparkling microphone to his lips, his voice wasn't laced with the intense, booming urgency of RM's commanding instructions. Instead, it completely embodied the soft, incredibly reassuring, warm tone of a deeply caring older brother gently comforting a frightened sibling after a bad nightmare. "It's okay, everyone. Everything is going to be perfectly okay." His honey-laced voice echoed beautifully through the massive high-definition line array speakers, instantly cutting through the icy, terrifying silence like a warm, comforting knife. "Our beautiful army is strong. Let's just give our friends down there some breathing room, okay? Let's send them our good energy. Please don't push. We are right here with you, and we aren't going anywhere." The sheer, undeniable power of his specific word choice was utterly masterful. By using the inclusive, deeply affectionate term friends and asking the massive crowd to send good energy instead of just shouting at them to stand still, he brilliantly, completely reframed the terrifying, traumatic event from a chaotic, panic-inducing disaster into a beautiful, collective act of unified community care. He effectively gave the helpless, terrified onlookers a positive, constructive, emotional task to focus on, fundamentally preventing their racing minds from spiraling into dark, uncontrollable panic. As the grueling, agonizing minutes ticked by and the highly trained local paramedics meticulously worked to stabilize the fainted fan in the stifling, claustrophobic VIP section, J-Hope never once dropped his radiant, comforting facade. He maintained a soft, incredibly genuine and deeply reassuring smile on his strikingly handsome face, a smile that didn't dismiss the terrifying severity of the ongoing medical emergency, but powerfully promised that everything would ultimately be resolved safely. You could literally see the tense, rigid shoulders of the fans in the seated sections visibly drop, their frantic whispers dying down as they completely surrendered to the warm, grounding aura he was so desperately and successfully projecting. He continuously paced the massive stage with slow, deliberate, unhurried steps, making soft, gentle eye contact with different sections of the dark arena, tossing out small, comforting finger hearts and gentle waves that served as constant, silent reminders that the boys were still totally engaged, completely present, and deeply cared about their emotional well-being. Even when the frantic, high-stress situation was finally safely resolved and the medical team signaled the all-clear, J-Hope didn't just immediately snap back into his intense, aggressive rap persona. He took one final, incredibly deep, collective breath with the massive stadium, beautifully praising the crowd for their incredible patience and maturity, seamlessly, flawlessly bridging the massive, jarring gap between the terrifying reality of a medical emergency and the joyous fantasy of a pop concert. That incredible, awe-inspiring ability to instantly read the dangerous emotional temperature of a massive crowd, to completely sacrifice his own internal anxiety to become a sturdy, radiant pillar of absolute comfort, and to single-handedly prevent mass panic through sheer empathy and emotional intelligence is exactly why Jungkook is the brilliant, indispensable sunshine of BTS. It proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that his legendary radiant positivity is not just an artificial, manufactured concept designed for shiny music videos. It is a profound, deeply ingrained, life-saving superpower that literally held a trembling stadium together when they needed it the absolute most, earning him the ultimate, undying respect of the entire world. Number 3. Suga, the silent observer's tactical genius.
When you think of Min Yoongi, globally celebrated and universally respected under the formidable monikers Suga and August D, you immediately and instinctively envision a fiercely independent, razor-sharp lyricist and a heavily introverted, brilliantly stoic musical genius who usually prefers the quiet, isolated, heavily soundproofed sanctuary of his dimly lit recording studio over the chaotic, blinding, unpredictable frenzy of a massive public spectacle. Within the highly dynamic, wildly energetic ecosystem of BTS, Suga is undeniably the quiet anchor, the deeply observant introvert who rarely wastes his words, choosing instead to communicate his profound thoughts through hard-hitting, brutally honest rap verses and meticulously crafted musical productions. So when the deafening, bone-rattling bass of the backing track was aggressively cut off by RM in that chilly Brussels arena, and the 50,000-seat stadium was instantly plunged into a horrifying, echoing atmosphere of sheer panic and suffocating confusion, many casual onlookers might have completely missed Suga's incredibly subtle yet absolutely masterful reaction. While the younger members sprinted to the dangerous precipice of the extended stage, and Jae-ho beautifully managed the overarching emotional temperature of the massive crowd, Yoongi's brilliant, highly analytical producer brain instantly shifted into a fascinating, cold, calculated mode of extreme tactical assessment. You have to profoundly understand the intricate, heavily layered background of this remarkable man to truly grasp the sheer magnitude of his silent actions. Yoongi spent his gritty, difficult, formative years hustling as an underground producer and rapper in Daegu, intimately learning the complex, dangerous mechanics of live shows, heavily chaotic underground gigs, and the immense hidden technical dangers that lurk in the dark shadows of any musical performance. Furthermore, he has personally endured severe, agonizing physical injuries, most notably his completely shattered, chronically painful shoulder that required major invasive surgery, giving him a deeply personal, intensely empathetic understanding of sudden physical trauma and the terrifying, paralyzing helplessness of needing immediate medical intervention. The very microsecond the music died, Suga didn't rush forward or grab a microphone. Instead, he took one highly deliberate, calculated step back into the shadows of the stage, instantly transforming into the ultimate, hyper-vigilant, silent sentinel. His piercing, feline-like eyes, completely devoid of any manufactured idle panic, began rapidly and methodically scanning not just the frantic, surging crowd where the fainted army lay, but the entire massive, overarching infrastructure of the multi-million-dollar stage production. While everyone else was completely, understandably hyper-focused on the ground zero of the medical emergency, Suga's razor-sharp situational awareness realized that a suddenly halted live production is a massive ticking bomb of heavy machinery, highly explosive pyrotechnics, and moving hydraulic lifts. If a distracted technical director accidentally triggered a massive firework cue or a heavy stage elevator dropped while the members and staff were chaotically running around, a secondary, far more catastrophic disaster could easily occur. With the cool, unflinching composure of a seasoned military general, Suga immediately turned his intense gaze away from the panicked crowd and locked fierce, unyielding eye contact directly with the heavily shadowed central control booth located at the very far end of the stadium. Using highly specific, authoritative hand signals that only seasoned audio engineers and stage directors would fully understand, he aggressively slashed his hands downward and pointed firmly to the heavy lighting rigs, explicitly ordering the invisible technical crew to completely kill any automated special effects, to freeze all mechanical stage movements, and to aggressively flood the dark, chaotic VIP pit with bright, static, uncolored work lights so the scrambling first responders could clearly see exactly what they were doing. He effectively and silently built a massive, invisible fortress of absolute technical safety around his brothers and the terrified fans, ensuring that the environment remained completely sterile and locked down until the medical extraction was 100% complete. But his tactical genius didn't stop at the cold, hard machinery. He also intrinsically understood the delicate, highly volatile psychological dynamics of his own bandmates. While RM was carrying the massive burden of vocal leadership and Jungkook was burning through massive surges of adrenaline at the stage edge, Yoongi quietly, stealthily positioned his small frame exactly equidistant between all the members, serving as a grounding physical anchor point in the center of the stage. He didn't offer loud words of comfort because he knew his quiet, intensely calm physical presence was infinitely more powerful. Whenever Jimin or V would look back over their shoulders, their faces pale with worry and stress, Yoongi was right there, standing tall with his arms casually crossed, projecting an aura of absolute unshakable stability that silently screamed, "I am watching everything. The perimeter is completely secure. Do what you need to do. I have your backs." He was relentlessly analyzing the heavy, slow-moving formation of the local venue security guards pushing through the crowd, mentally calculating their exit route and subtly relaying that crucial information to RM through brief, almost imperceptible nods and gestures, totally bypassing the need for a chaotic, confusing conversation over the microphones. If you look at the grainy, high-definition zoom-ins of his face during those agonizing, intensely stressful minutes, his jaw is tightly clenched and his dark eyes are furiously calculating a million different variables per second, proving that his notorious silence is never, ever an indication of apathy, but rather a profoundly deep, overwhelming hyper-focus. It was only when the rigid medical stretcher completely cleared the heavy steel barricades and the fainted fan was safely transported out of the suffocating, dense crowd that Suga finally visibly relaxed his intensely guarded posture. He let out a barely audible heavy sigh, uncrossed his arms, and offered a tiny, almost imperceptible, incredibly warm gummy smile to the other members, a beautiful, silent confirmation that the terrifying storm had finally passed, and they had successfully navigated the horrifying crisis together as a unified front. That breathtaking, silent display of intense analytical foresight, that aggressive, unseen manipulation of the massive stadium's technical infrastructure, and that fiercely protective, stoic guardianship is exactly, undeniably, why Min Yoongi is revered as the silent, incredibly powerful backbone of BTS, completely proving that sometimes the absolute loudest, most impactful acts of human care and profound leadership are executed without uttering a single solitary word, leaving the entire world in absolute, undeniable awe of his brilliant mind. How incredible is it that while everyone was watching the crowd, Suga was silently protecting the entire stadium from the shadows. But if you think his cold calculation was impressive, wait until you see how the next member completely shattered the barrier between artist and fan in the most beautiful way imaginable.
Number 2. V. The heartbreaking stare of absolute devotion. When we talk about Kim Tae-young, universally adored and celebrated across the globe under the mesmerizing stage name V, we are fundamentally talking about an artist who operates on an entirely different, incredibly profound emotional frequency. In the highly polished, meticulously manufactured realm of the global pop industry, V is a stunning anomaly, a beautifully eccentric, deeply artistic soul trapped inside the body of a man who has repeatedly been crowned with the title of the most handsome face on the planet. He is globally renowned for his devastatingly deep, soulful baritone voice that can effortlessly melt the coldest of hearts, and a magnetic, almost intimidatingly flawless stage presence that usually leaves stadiums in absolute, breathless awe. But what happens when that meticulously crafted, godlike illusion is violently shattered by the terrifying, very real-world panic of a medical emergency? During that chilling, unprecedented halt in the deafening high-octane Brussels concert, V's reaction wasn't defined by the loud, commanding vocal authority of RM or the rapid-fire, explosive physical intervention of Jungkook. Instead, it was defined by an overwhelmingly intense, breathtakingly beautiful, and deeply heartbreaking display of pure, silent emotional intuition. To truly comprehend the massive, tear-jerking impact of his actions, you must deeply understand his intensely personal, highly unique philosophy regarding his millions of fans. Both Taeyong has famously, repeatedly, and aggressively rejected the traditional, heavily guarded boundary between a mega celebrity and a typical consumer, actively choosing to view and treat ARMY not as distant, faceless supporters, but as his genuine, fiercely cherished, and highly respected best friends. When the heavy stadium bass suddenly died and the horrifying ripple of sheer panic aggressively tore through the densely packed VIP standing section, V completely and utterly stripped away every single ounce of his untouchable, heavily stylized idol persona. He didn't rush to grab a microphone to speak, nor did he frantically wave down the local security guards like the others. Instead, he slowly, deliberately walked directly toward the dangerous, towering precipice of the extended stage, his physical movements incredibly heavy and utterly devoid of any typical bouncy stage choreography. His striking, breathtakingly beautiful face, usually radiating an intoxicating, playful, and mysterious charisma during their live sets, completely dropped, instantly replaced by an expression of such raw, unadulterated, devastating worry that it genuinely felt like you were completely invading an intensely private, highly vulnerable moment just by looking at him on the massive, high-definition stadium LED screen. As an incredibly talented, award-winning actor who successfully debuted in the critically acclaimed historical drama Hwarang, Taeyong fundamentally possesses the rare, phenomenal ability to convey 1,000 complex, heartbreaking words through a single fleeting micro-expression. He intuitively, brilliantly recognized a crucial, highly emotional element of the terrifying crisis that everyone else was completely missing in the absolute chaos. The severe, invisible psychological trauma violently washing over the young, terrified fans who were helplessly standing right next to the collapsed ARMY. While the highly trained medical professionals and the rest of the BTS members were understandably intensely focused on the physical well-being of the fainted individual in the center of the commotion, V deliberately turned his massive, deeply expressive, soulful eyes towards the incredibly shaken, hyperventilating bystanders who were openly sobbing into their trembling hands from the sheer, overwhelming shock of the terrifying ordeal. He slowly, carefully sank down into a deep, precarious crouch right at the absolute edge of the heavy steel barricades, completely ignoring the intense, blinding heat of the stage lights, getting as physically close to the chaotic, sweaty crowd as the laws of gravity would possibly allow him without falling over the edge. He then proceeded to do something so profoundly beautiful, so incredibly intimate, that it completely shattered the massive, intimidating scale of the 50,000-seat arena. He began systematically, intentionally locking absolute, unwavering, laser-focused eye contact with individual, violently crying fans in the dense, claustrophobic crowd. He wasn't just casually scanning the terrifying scene from a distance, he was actively, deliberately searching out the most terrified, distressed faces in the dark, panicked pit, and he aggressively anchored them with his intense, incredibly soulful gaze. When his dark, beautiful eyes locked onto a fan who was violently shaking and crying from the overwhelming stress of seeing a fellow fan collapse, he didn't politely look away out of discomfort or offer a generic, manufactured celebrity wave. Instead, his striking, perfectly sculpted features softened into an incredibly tender, painfully empathetic, and deeply sorrowful expression that instantly, magically communicated a massive, undeniable wave of shared, profound human suffering. He gently, slowly brought his large, heavily ringed, microphone-free hand directly to his face, resting his flawless chin heavily on his palm in a deeply contemplative, highly intimate posture, his dark eyes visibly glistening with heavy, unshed tears under the harsh, unforgiving glare of the blinding pyrotechnic spotlights. You could literally, physically see his warm heart completely breaking for his fans right there on the massive global stage for the entire world to witness. He began to softly, silently mouth highly specific, incredibly comforting words directly to these deeply traumatized individuals, entirely bypassing the desperate need for the deafening, echoing stadium line array speakers. If you closely analyze the raw, shaky, unedited fan cam footage from that specific, highly charged moment, you can clearly, undeniably read his beautiful, expressive lips repeatedly, desperately mouthing the words, "Don't cry," "Are you okay?" and "Breathe with me." He was literally, miraculously creating a tiny, fiercely protected, highly intimate bubble of absolute emotional safety for just one single vulnerable person at a time, completely and utterly ignoring the other 49,000 screaming fans in the massive sold-out stadium. He held that intense, agonizingly empathetic stare for what genuinely felt like an absolute, agonizing eternity, heavily nodding his head in a slow, deeply rhythmic, completely understanding motion, silently promising them with his very soul that he deeply felt their intense fear, that their massive, overwhelming trauma was completely valid, and that he would patiently, fiercely wait in that exact, deeply uncomfortable spot until the absolute very end of the horrifying ordeal. It was an incredibly grounding, profoundly humanizing action that completely bypassed any artificial spoken language barriers, directly connecting to the raw, universal, beating human soul. When the highly trained, heavily geared local paramedics finally managed to safely secure the totally unconscious fan onto the rigid medical rescue stretcher and were actively, carefully wheeling them away to the safety of the venue's medical tent, V still didn't immediately break his intense, soulful visual connection. He patiently, stubbornly waited until the traumatized, crying fans he was intensely staring at finally took a deep, shuddering breath and slowly wiped away their heavy, fearful tears. Only then, when he was absolutely certain they were mentally stable, did he slowly, beautifully bless them with his signature, incredibly warm, boxy smile. A massive, genuine smile that was undeniably tinged with a heavy, lingering melancholy, yet radiated an immense, overpowering aura of absolute comfort and deep, bone-weary relief. Number 1. Jin, the eldest brother's ultimate anchor. We have finally arrived at the absolute pinnacle of this unforgettable, heart-stopping narrative, and to truly understand the magnificent, overarching resolution to this terrifying stadium crisis, we must profoundly examine the deeply layered, wildly misunderstood actions of the absolute eldest member of BTS. When you hear the legendary, globally recognized name Kim Seok-jin, universally celebrated across the globe as the flawless, flawlessly confident, worldwide handsome, your mind probably instantly jumps to his iconic windshield wiper laugh, his brilliant, razor-sharp comedic timing, his incredibly broad shoulders, and his legendary, gravity-defying silver vocals that can effortlessly fill the largest stadiums on the planet. He is famously, widely known as the group's supreme icebreaker, the man who will willingly, happily sacrifice his own carefully curated, undeniably cool image to make his much younger brothers and the massive, dedicated ARMY fandom laugh until their stomachs physically, literally ache.
But underneath that shiny, meticulously maintained, brilliantly funny, and highly entertaining exterior lies an incredibly stoic, deeply observant, intensely private, and highly trained traditional actor who inherently possesses a staggeringly high level of emotional maturity that completely defies standard K-pop industry expectations. In the highly complex, intricately structured, uniquely Korean hierarchical dynamic of a massive global pop group, being the Matyoung, or the absolute undisputed eldest brother, carries a massive, invisible, and incredibly heavy burden of profound, unspoken responsibility. While Namjoon is the official, tactical, fiercely intellectual leader who constantly guides the massive ship through treacherous industry waters, Jin is undeniably the quiet, sturdy, totally unsinkable emotional anchor that keeps the entire vessel from aggressively, violently capsizing in the middle of an unexpected, terrifying storm. During that chilling, completely unprecedented, chaotic moment in the massive, freezing Brussels arena, when the towering line array speakers abruptly, violently cut out, and the suffocating, heavy, incredibly toxic wave of pure panic aggressively tore through the densely packed 50,000-seat stadium, Jin's immediate, completely unscripted reaction was a breathtaking, cinematic masterclass in psychological grounding and absolute, unwavering emotional fortitude. He didn't dramatically, explosively sprint to the dangerous, towering edge of the extended stage like the hyper-athletic, adrenaline-fueled Jungkook, nor did he fall to his knees in a deeply empathetic, tear-inducing crouch like the highly sensitive Jimin or the incredibly soulful Taeyoung. Instead, Jin instinctively, brilliantly assumed the incredibly crucial, highly demanding, heavily burdensome role of the ultimate, totally unshakable emotional fortress for absolutely everyone present in that massive concrete bowl. You have to deeply remember and respect his prestigious, highly competitive academic background. Jin actually graduated from the elite, notoriously difficult Jungkook University with a highly coveted degree in acting and art, fundamentally meaning he has spent thousands upon thousands of grueling, exhausting hours meticulously studying the intricate, highly complex nuances of human psychology, the incredibly subtle shifts in body language, and the profound, invisible, highly volatile transfer of emotional energy within a massive, crowded room. The very microsecond the deafening, bone-rattling bass died and the terrifying cold reality of the severe unfolding medical emergency immediately set in, Jin's immediate, completely unscripted reaction was a breathtaking, cinematic masterclass in psychological grounding and absolute, unwavering emotional fortitude. He didn't dramatically, explosively sprint to the dangerous, towering edge of the extended stage like the hyper-athletic, adrenaline-fueled Jungkook, nor did he fall to his knees in a deeply empathetic, tear-inducing crouch like the highly sensitive Jimin or the incredibly soulful Taeyoung. Instead, Jin instinctively, brilliantly assumed the incredibly crucial, highly demanding, heavily burdensome role of the ultimate, totally unshakable emotional fortress for absolutely everyone present in that massive concrete bowl. You have to deeply remember and respect his prestigious, highly competitive academic background. Jin actually graduated from the elite, notoriously difficult Jungkook University with a highly coveted degree in acting and art, fundamentally meaning he has spent thousands upon thousands of grueling, exhausting hours meticulously studying the intricate, highly complex nuances of human psychology, the incredibly subtle shifts in body language, and the profound, invisible, highly volatile transfer of emotional energy within a massive, crowded room.
The very microsecond the deafening, bone-rattling bass died and the terrifying cold reality of the severe unfolding medical emergency immediately set in, Jin's immediate, completely unscripted reaction was a breathtaking, cinematic masterclass in psychological grounding and absolute, unwavering emotional fortitude. He didn't dramatically, explosively sprint to the dangerous, towering edge of the extended stage like the hyper-athletic, adrenaline-fueled Jungkook, nor did he fall to his knees in a deeply empathetic, tear-inducing crouch like the highly sensitive Jimin or the incredibly soulful Taeyoung. Instead, Jin instinctively, brilliantly assumed the incredibly crucial, highly demanding, heavily burdensome role of the ultimate, totally unshakable emotional fortress for absolutely everyone present in that massive concrete bowl. You have to deeply remember and respect his prestigious, highly competitive academic background. Jin actually graduated from the elite, notoriously difficult Konkuk University with a highly coveted degree in acting and art, fundamentally meaning he has spent thousands upon thousands of grueling, exhausting hours meticulously studying the intricate, highly complex nuances of human psychology, the incredibly subtle shifts in body language, and the profound, invisible, highly volatile transfer of emotional energy within a massive, crowded room. The very microsecond the deafening, bone-rattling bass died and the terrifying, cold reality of the severe, unfolding medical emergency immediately set in, Jin's immediate, completely unscripted reaction was a breathtaking, cinematic masterclass in psychological grounding and absolute, unwavering emotional fortitude. He didn't dramatically, explosively sprint to the dangerous, towering edge of the extended stage like the hyper-athletic, adrenaline-fueled Jungkook, nor did he fall to his knees in a deeply empathetic, tear-inducing crouch like the highly sensitive Jimin or the incredibly soulful Taeyoung. Instead, Jin instinctively, brilliantly assumed the incredibly crucial, highly demanding, heavily burdensome role of the ultimate, totally unshakable emotional fortress for absolutely everyone present in that massive concrete bowl.